This is the 8-9 Combo.
This is the 8-9 Combo. I'm Brett McKay. This is Harry Jones, and this is the Weekend Post-Mortem, mate. Hello. We have seen a big weekend of rugby. How are you?
How's it, man? I've done the cycle. I went from 2 a.m. to about 1 a.m. I've watched under 20s. I've watched teams lose that should have won. I've watched teams won that should have lost. It's an actual blur of font and weird snacks. But yeah, we get it. I think that was the final one. No, or maybe there might be one more match still left.
No, I think that was the final game of the weekend. The Wallabies have managed to scrape home against Fiji in Newcastle, and we'll get into that, and we'll get into the All Blacks surviving a big scare over France, and the Springboks keeping Italy at arm's length as well. We'll get all into that into the Weekend Post-Mortem. We're very much in Lions tour mode for the Weekend Post-Mortem, as we've been saying, but we will now be ripping into all the big moments and all the big results from the first full weekend of July internationals, which we're really going to enjoy getting into. But before any of that, mate, could you please explain why, or if subscribing to the 8-9 Combo will make our viewers and listeners less woke?
Well, it's a victimless crime. So it's almost like you robbing the bank, we're robbing the bank, but no one gets hurt, and then we get more money. And that's good.
True.
That's always good because, baby needs some more new shoes. Daddy needs to buy some shoes. And we are still, as yet, a subscriber-free pod. And yet, through your incredible allegiance, we get large S. So it's a beautiful system. Yes. And you get the cracking hot, incredibly versatile and relevant commentary all the time in your pod box.
Help us get drunk with relevance. That's basically what we're asking for. Isn't it? Yeah, exactly. Right, straight into it, mate. Wallabies 21 have beaten Fiji 18 in Newcastle. They got there is the best way I can sum up this one.
Yeah, I mean it's a strange weekend, and there's a lot of parallels here. There's a lot of teams who had more carries, more possession, more territory, but they just kind of snuck home. And there's quite a few matches in which the loser feels not too bad, outperformed expectations. So it's almost like one of those weekends that sets up the next weekend. But in particular, that match, I thought that there's going to be a lot of tired and bruised bodies in Wallaby camp. There's going to be a lot of stern admonitions around the carry clean game. And, a guy like Lord Laurie Fisher, your friend, is going to plenty to coach around. Like, oh, look at this and look at that.
I've just popped up in social media, and we're recording this only 20 minutes since half time. I can still see that post-match interviews and things like that are happening on the field in Newcastle. I just put the point up on the socials that they reckon you learn more out of a loss, but there are so many lessons that the Wallabies need to take out of this game as well. So, you're right. One of those wins that probably feels like a loss, and there has been a few of those over the weekend. So what's the big takeaways, do you think, for the Wallabies out of this win?
Yeah, and so, again, the lucky winners or the close winners are going to see something. All these teams that did that turnovers will make a match that seems like it's one and done really, really tough. And the Wallabies coughed up too much ball. In rugby, turnovers lost don't equal turnovers won, because you lose a turnover by spilling the ball when you had the ball too many. And everyone knows this. Every time when you came into rugby, you realize you're playing against Pacific Island, Pacifica teams. Letting the ball fall around on the ground is not a good idea.
There was a classic
off the field.
There's a classic moment where 72nd minute. Fiji have completely buggered up their line-out throw. They didn't get a jumper up at all. Tom Hooper at the back very belatedly realised that there's a ball floating in the air and no one getting it. So he's literally just reached up and managed to get a hand on it, whacked it to the Australian side. None of the Australian backs were ready for it, and a Fijian loose forward got there and got it in the end. That just that just summed up the game for me. It was messy. It was a long way off being polished. It was a classic game of two halves. For 39 minutes and 50 seconds, the Wallabies were very good in the first half until they suddenly weren't. And then the second half was just, it was like the ground at Newcastle just suddenly had a tilt to it. Like
rugby's not an accumulation game. We try to make it seem like that with our stats, but in reality, if one team just has moments, a couple of moments, even that one right on the stroke of half time where they just ran it in, it can cancel and negate beautiful mountains of stats. We had these carries and these cleans, but if you try to do a chip when you really should boot the ball into row H and get the guy who's getting the beer, instead you look at yourself and you're saying, why did we do that to ourselves? I thought that across the whole weekend, there was so many moments like that where poise, composure, thinking in the heat of battle, which is what these coaches would love. And to your point about learning from wins, sometimes that narrow win is exceptionally good coaching fodder. Because you can go, look at that. You could have lost it all.
If you didn't do this in the 79th minute, we'd be having a very different conversation. Yeah, I completely agree. Do you think there were any questions answered for Joe Schmidt out of that game?
Probably captaincy. There was some stirrings, and I'm not sure how serious they were. But Harry Wilson has these this is a permanent tribe of doubters and detractors and minimizers of what he does. And so when you have the shoulder boulder holder behind, blind dot down, almost mysteriously, like Jeff Parks, our friend, put it, like it was almost easier to hold that up than to score it. Someone should have been able to put their hand under there.
Yes.
I think
it was in the air for a long time. Yes,
that's sort of captain's innancy. I think also the idea that you can just rock up and your set piece will carry you, and you can just, it's just test rugby has too many components and parts, and so I think it's a sobering wake up call, and we'll see this as we go through each of these games where the favored one was supposed to do it, even in under 20s, England versus South Africa. I think you have to take care of the ball. And you have to know where you are. And
I think you're right.
And game managers, we'll go back to this, who can steer the ship. But listen, Fiji is always a tough proposition. They have made their whole life on, overestimation.
And they are only becoming tougher. I completely agree with you. They are only becoming tougher. And the thing about Fiji is that they still play 90% of their test matches on foreign soil. They never get to play at home. So when the time comes, and it's going to have to happen soon with this Nations Championship, when the time comes that Fiji get to start playing test matches on home soil, they are going to be incredibly tough to beat for anyone on the day. You talk about game managers, and I think the big question for Joe Schmidt now is actually going to be around injury concern. Noah Lolosea has been taken off on a stretcher, on a Medicab, another worrying head neck injury. That's the third this year, and it's the 6th of July. I mean, if he's out for a period of time, there's question marks over Tom Liner's fitness. There's questions on what Ben Donaldson can do. I don't think he showed a whole lot in that last 20 minutes. I mean, it's only going to fuel the James O'Connor debate, isn't it?
Tane Edmed. Here we go, baby. Maybe, it's going to be really funny if Tane Edmed walks into the squad now after not even being able to start for Waratahs against
coming off the bench for the Waratahs.
Yeah,
which we'll get to in a sec. Yeah, look, the other thing I think out of it was that I think this game showed that a number of players are momentum specialists. Like Langy Gleeson was excellent in the first half, and first half didn't see him after the break. Harry Potter had some wonderful moments in the first half. Didn't see much of him after the break. Didn't see much of Tom Wright after the break. And, the Wallabies had bugger all ball in the second half. I looked and I posted a stat with about 10 minutes to go. That point said the Fiji had 74% of ball possession in the last 10 minutes. That felt way low to me. The Wallabies had no ball in that second half as well. And it's hard to do anything without that. But there was a number of players that I think just sort of disappeared from the contest. So We'll see.
From Fiji's standpoint, I wish that
Fiji were excellent, should say too. Yeah.
From their standpoint, I wish they and other teams like them would take the field goal. You look at it later, you're doing so many phases and you're resourcing rucks and you're at the end of your power. You're totally gassed getting to these rucks. It's far harder to clean rucks than to get there sometimes. It's just difficult to get big boys there. And it just slot one, then you're up almost an unassailable lead. It puts Wallabies on, you can just draw. And it's hindsight, but look, we can look back on rugby for 100 years, and drop goals used to be way more thought of. It was an option.
George Ford had 2 shots at drop goal in Argentina overnight.
Mm-hmm.
So, maybe there's something in that. Anything else you need to talk about from that? I think in so many respects, that feels like a game that we need to quickly move on from.
Yeah, I think it wasn't the biggest game of the weekend for me, and also
I don't think it was either.
It was part of a fabric, which is everyone was chastened. Everyone was there was a sobriety check here. Like no one is really as good as they thought they were.
No, that's fair. Let's go to Sydney then. The Waratahs, the Waratahs were very good. To be fair, in going down to the Lions 21-10 in Sydney overnight. What's the 1 minute summary of that performance last night? Because the Lions looked that was unquestionably their scratchiest performance so far.
Yeah, in South Africa we'd call this a Gees game. Spirit. It was pure mana. I think the Kiwis would call it. It was purely on mana and Gees. It wasn't on tactical awareness. If you look at the stats, they were overrun. I had one of my worst ever prediction articles. I wasn't really prediction so much as saying I was worried. I couldn't see any rationale for why the Twas would be able to hang within 50, 60, 70. And I worried about a record loss.
So on that point, Hugh Sinclair in the post-match last night.
Coverage about, no, not you, you're right. But, Lions winning by 50 every week, or, I saw something about, it's going to be worse than the Tars losing 96-19 to Crusaders. And
that was you.
It just gets you fired up, and be nice to, get a bit of positivity around, Aussie rugby. I know we've been struggling a bit, but, we had a crack tonight. They're just, 23 blokes as well, so why can't we put a bit of pressure on and,
You're welcome, Hugh.
That was you. You fired up the Waratahs.
Yeah, you're welcome, Hugh. And by the way, I don't think Hugh had a lot to do with that. By the way, but
fired up the Waratahs.
No, it was tremendously like the way I saw that going. I did not find a way that this result. I couldn't see it. I looked across some of the markers. I saw I think the Reds. The loss by the Reds really threw me for a loop, and I couldn't see how the Waratahs were a lot better than the Reds.
So I didn't realize you'd written that article, I must admit. And it was late in the game. I started getting messages saying, I think this one's on Harry. And I'm going, what's going on? What's what about? And then someone sent me the link, and I read your article, and I thought,
you're welcome.
Well,
yeah. So
I couldn't actually argue with your reasoning, like the reason that you got to the worry that you were expressing. I couldn't argue with it, but funny that it's certainly funny that it got to the players.
That's brilliant. I think it was very interesting, actually. Like, so the premise of the article was there was 2 parts, and one was that it was delicate to bring Owen Farrell in at this stage, and then on the Tars side, it didn't look like the matchups favored them because everything that they were particularly bad at, 49th, 50th, 51st out of all those clubs in the club rugby, that was all the reasons why the Lions would like it. And indeed, the Tars never led. They never looked like winning. The Lions were always 100% going to be winning, but they were never in control. And when you looked at why, the Waratahs did almost everything that they should have done all season, and they put it into one match. and they spoiled everything. They were, they were maybe the Waratahs were sort of 20 turnovers up on the turnover exchange. I mean, unbelievable. At some point, Charlie Gamble was a was a cartoon figure. His moustache like ruled Allianz. And
his moustache was winning pilfers as much as he was. Yeah.
Yeah, and the Lions played so much rugby, 215 passes, there was 124 carries, started ragged, their wings looked bad, they had spotty set piece, they were very wasteful of their 70% territory.
Yeah.
And you looked at the team sheet, the prop and hooker for the Twas didn't even know who they were.
Maybe the reserve loose head, I think, was playing Colts in Sydney 12 months ago.
Yeah, and then you have the Lions stinking it up. Ben Earl, Scott Cummings, Peter Schumann, Louis Cowan-Dickey. I thought Mac Hansen wasn't very good either. Hugo Keenan was way off the pace. They all had their sort of worst games of the season. And I'm like, well, hello, good to know you, Waratahs.
From a Lions point of view, they probably, what they took out of this is they probably put a few lines through players.
It's helpful to just eliminate some guys.
Probably narrowed the field. Yeah,
you're great, but you're not in form. And I thought that was probably good for Andy.
Yeah.
We're moving on. This is our midweek team.
So I've got my scribble from last night, and I've just got the Waratahs played out of their skin. They made the game messy. Gamble was enormous, and 10 turnovers won was a big thing. Conversely, the Lions started well, fell away worryingly, like unbelievably worryingly. 20 turnovers conceded, and they looked scratchy.
That 10-20 is killer. That's a killer.
Yeah. Like they started really well. Midfield looked good. Hugh Jones had another storming game, and the combination finding him in that first 25-minute period was pretty good, I thought. But yeah, they really. What was the score at halftime? Remind me of that. Where were we? Can't remember. It was two tries to one. Yeah, so they were just well on top at halftime. It just felt like they were going to go on with it from there, but they just couldn't get away. And now we have this Watergate thing.
We've always had gates following the Watergate, but finally we have an actual Watergate. So it's really cool. Yes. It might be even more Watergate than the Watergate.
The Lions, j'accuse, suggesting that the Waratahs might have had the pitch watered to slow things down. Dan McKellar in the post-match had a bit of a chuckle and said, well, Andy Farrell was probably sunning himself in Queensland when we were in the middle of a cyclone down here on Tuesday. So yeah.
A very honest man who I think has a foot in both camps, Jonathan Drennan from Sydney.
Yeah, good Irishman.
He wrote that he and his dad were there at the pitch day before, and they had manual dryers out there.
Yeah.
Well, we have the answer that Andy Farrell was wrong here.
It had only just been announced on Friday, I think, that at the end of this season, once the football season is done, there's going to have to be a massive review of the drainage system at Allianz Stadium, and they've basically told Sydney FC, the A-League club, that they might not be able to play there for several months whilst they fix it, because it's been when there's been a big sudden downpour on it, and there's been a couple of numerous occasions of games, and it's just turns into an old-fashioned slush fest. So. Yeah,
having been there and been overcharged for the sauce with Chook and Trev, there is something wrong with how the ceiling and the hole in the ceiling corresponds with the pitch and the stands, and I can see why there's a lot of pooling going on.
Yeah, right.
Like for example, they sold the tickets, and it was a very rainy night. We were there against there was a box of Wallabies.
This is in your architectural opinion.
First 10 rows. It was like you were someone was actually just taking buckets and just pouring them on your head. And literally they were so proud of that fact before we opened. So I know that someone's measurements are off if you got, whatever 10 rows times those rows, you have those thousands of people who paid the most are getting drenched. There are some serious problems with what they thought the water was going to do. And I know one thing for sure, the way it's set up nowadays on the modern pitches, you don't want water just coming down in buckets right where it's supposed to roll away.
No, you do not. You do not. So the stadium's only been open 3 years, and we're already talking about a major
cool stadium. I just want to say that.
It's a wonderful stadium. Yeah. It is a genuinely wonderful stadium. But yes, definitely does have a drainage problem. The Lions are next in Canberra, where they take on the ACT Brumbies on Wednesday the 9th, and I very much can't wait for that. Looking forward to that.
The Telegraph, Gavin Mayers, I think, was the guy writing it, but it's accumulated wisdom and my ear to the ground of people I've been hearing from Lions side is a lot of these spots really are probably, at least penciled in, hard penciled.
Yeah, I think a few more would be after
James
this
Lowe, Finn Russell, Jamison Gibson Park, sort of Irish, Scottish flavor there. The midfield looking more and more like it's just going to stick with Ringrose, Aki for other reasons than attack, but because their ability to bend the line on offense it just seems more important. That Sione Tuipulotu is not looking the good so far. Tommy Freeman, a little bit ahead of Mac Hansen. I think so. The question marks
I don't think it's a little way.
Fullback is a difficult one because of Daly sort of looking the goods. Then he's out. Hugo really off the pace. Blair Kinghorn sort of coming in out of nowhere. That's a tricky one. Marcus Smith hasn't really looked like a 15. No. But in the forward pack, I think Jack Conan's held his hand up and just said, "You need me at 8." And there's a big question mark of 5, 6, 7 because the constitution of that is very difficult. Morrow definitely in. Dan Sheehan probably, and Ellis Genge probably, and some arguments about tight end. But the big debate, and I think you saw it there on Sydney, is who do you want as a big six? So you want a quick six? Do you want a loose trio that's more like Argentina, where they're all interchangeable, or the French, or do you want specific roles where someone's supposed to bounce, someone's supposed to bank robber, and someone's supposed to be the big bear? And that's not worked out yet.
I wonder if they could play McCarthy at lock, Burn at 6, Conan at 8, and slot even slotting maybe Jack Morgan on the open side because he's been really, really good.
If you just say you got to pick one open side right now, purely on form, you'd probably go Jack Morgan. But before the tour started, I was saying Burn at 6. I just feel like there was a potential to outmuscle the Wallabies. Well, I'm not so sure you should go into the Wallabies and think you're going to be quick. I just don't know if that really works. I think you still need at 6, a proper body. Yeah. And if you don't have a lock 6 there, I don't know who you have. There's not really this sort of quintessential Courtney Laws, Peter Steph Toy running around right now.
It's a fair question. Anyway, if the Lions get back, it will be because you fired up the Waratahs, and as Hugh Sinclair said, it would be good to have some positivity. So once again, I find myself asking, why do you hate Australian rugby?
Anyway, I'm happy for the guys. I was really happy the Waratahs did that. I've been sort of secretly pulling for them, but frustratingly all season. I don't like how the coaches have used my friend Payne Edmed, but no, that's cool. And I do think it was definitely mental. It was definitely mental. So throw out cohesion markers, throw out the people who have universal theories. There are times when you can coach up a team to have enough grievance and offense, and the world is against us. We just saw with the Northampton Saints taking down Leinster, and the Waratahs did that. They just hung in the fight. They never gave up.
They did enough. The first test was played in New Zealand of France's tour of the of New Zealand. New Zealand 31-20, France 27 down in Dunedin. Where do you want to go with this? It was all the expectation, all the narrative leading into this game was all about not just how comfortably New Zealand would win, but by how big a margin. And oh my goodness, there is going to be some revision of this French squad done in New Zealand this week.
Yeah, and it was really a 1-point win. You just sort of have that padding of the 28-7, 27 goes to 3. It was razor sharp. Could have gone either way. The French could have won in Eden Park with a team that was described as being disrespectful, undermanned. If you took the equivalent team of New Zealand, I will not allow you to take any Crusaders. You cannot take any Chiefs, and also I'm gonna strip you of most of the Blues and Canes. What the fuck you got? Okay, you're gonna get killed in Paris. And listen, and Kiwi friends, you would get killed in Paris. Right now, if you play the best French team and you got to take your third string new All Blacks team, be honest, admit it. So you only get to put your best 15. So when it comes down to it, best 15 versus best 15, I'll still take the All Blacks, because I just think they have that magic. But grant and admit now that the depth is on the side of the French, because that was ridiculous. Those guys did not look like flukes. There were several players on there that the New Zealand pundits would say, I don't know their names. Well, now you know their names. And you realize that they can defend for long passages against the best All Blacks were throwing at them without giving penalties up. They looked really composed. They have athletes all over the field. They have people you don't know, but if you've been watching Top 14, you would know them. And so I thought this was the most important balance of power shifting game of the weekend, where you had to say, my eyes are not lying. I'm looking at facts. This is empirical. This really is a third string French team. There was Gaël Ficou. And then who else? there was not a lot of people in there that New Zealand guys would have known, and I thought that was magnificent. And it was a wake up call for New Zealand rugby to say,
absolutely, it was.
We have to start watching some of these guys, because that's who's coming to 2027 in the World Cup. Where I don't know, they look ominous to me.
There will be some commentators over there doing a whole lot of research this week.
And Sean Edwards' defense does work on players that haven't played together a lot with a lot of those reps. He has a very simplified.
His system is simple enough. Yes, I agree with that. Yeah, I agree with that. The thing that summed up for me with the whole attitude towards this French team was Lima Sopawanga, All Black fly half, Highlanders champion. Has spent a lot of time playing in Europe and France, puts out a tweet saying, I've been saying this is a good French team. You lot all need to start watching more French rugby. And the response he gets was, oh, no, that feels like we lost that more than France are going to win it. And he was like, dude, you're just confirming what I said.
Nah, that's a wrong take, because number one, Lima obviously knows what he's talking about, and it's funny for some unwashed guy on Twitter to be attacking Lima like he doesn't know something. But second, when you look at the quality of the game itself, New Zealand had great set pieces. There was not a lot of errors, no sign. They had 3 penalties against them. 3. That's the All Blacks were penalized 3 times. So you cannot say they played poorly. You can just say that they threw everything in the kitchen sink at the Sean Edwards coach defense, and this third string team held up. And they're probably going to get toweled next week, but and it's still shitty that the French didn't send their prop players. I get all that. But the depth is magnificent and scary.
There will be a bounce back factor next week. There's no doubt at all. And you're right. France, they probably get beaten by 15 or 20 next week.
Right.
But all the points that have been made in the last week have just been shown to be complete and utter bullshit.
It's very interesting how good they are building. A squad of 45, a squad of 50 for them looks very scary at the bottom compared to the most other teams. I think they still have to find their breakthrough moment. Obviously in World Cups, but if you think of the pyramid, and this is where the cohesion markers do matter, is that long build. The league, the championship, and the 3-year cycle. They're sitting pretty.
So if you think about it, and if they've left their top, 15 odd players at home, and they've still taken 38 or whatever it is to New Zealand, plus they've probably got another 15 on the fringe. They're basically working with a squad of 65.
Mm-hmm. That's the dream. That's the plan. That's what they are implementing the plan.
Oh, to have such depth. South Africa got it done in Pretoria, mate, against Italy, 42-27 there. The thing I noted down about this, I didn't watch it live. I caught up with it on Sunday morning, and they look well on top. Led comfortably at halftime. 28-3 at halftime.
4 converted tries.
Well comfortable, well on top. Game going to script at that point. Then even they get it out to near the hour, they get it out to 33-10, I think. And then suddenly Italy scores 2 late tries up through the middle. And then South Africa have to score a late try to put it out to 42. But there was a 15-minute period there in that second half where Italy just went, we're just going to plow on through here. And they had a little bit of success. So I read a couple of quotes of Rassie Erasmus post-match, and the word frustrating featured a lot.
Mm. Well, you could be frustrated with himself too. You know, if you've been around Bok rugby enough, you know that we treat this kind of win like a loss. And the standards that we hold ourselves to, and our team, and I think even coaches and players alike, is pretty strict. So that was the worst. It was about the worst 30 minutes of Bok rugby in probably about 5 years.
Yeah.
Considering that there was a 18-meter maul run against us. There was 21 points scored in the second half. That is more than you have to struggle to find a match until you go back to Alistair Coetzee days, where any team scored 3 tries and a half. And it was Italy, and it wasn't there. Yeah, they were missing some of their players too.
Oh, and I've lost my co-host, which I think is maybe a first like this. He was making a very, very good point that Italy were without a few of their first, and it was it'll be a shock to the system for South Africa, no doubt. You're back.
Yeah. So
I was having to summarize for you.
The theory of the bomb squad, and a lot of people coming around to it, is well formed. And here's how at Loftus what happened was, at 47 minutes, the entire tight 5 goes off, but the tight 5 was ascendant, and Holly Robinson, the referee, had sort of let the scrum, even won a tight head against Italy's scrum, but she hadn't penalized it very much, and there was no sign that Eben or Lutiaga were tired. Wilco Low was still scrumming for fun. Malcolm Marks was having one of his days. So the theory really would have been, even though you're up 28-3, just let it ride. Because now the scrum was getting obliterated by Italy. So now is when you'll start to get those scrum feeds, because the scrum feeds had all been Italy in the first half. And so now you'll get your ascendancy. And I was thinking at the time, just let them play and then let them come on non-theatrically one at a time. And instead, there was this pre-planned thing where at Loftus, the DJ was playing bomb music. There was fireworks going on when the bomb squad ran on, and there were fireworks going. It was almost a flyover, and and then immediately got driven, mauled, no scrum penalties won, and the whole dynamic changed. You let Italy back into the match. Yeah. So in the old days, remember that this ridiculous replacement strategy some teams had, where you knew exactly when Ben Alexander would come on, or you would know exactly when, Michael Hooper would go off. And that was bad too. But this is a different form of, like, you always bring the bomb squad in because you fall in love with the name and the brand.
Yes.
And this was a great example.
Bomb squad headlines on the hop. Yeah.
This was an adage to Rossi to say, I know you invented that, you branded it, you made it cool to be a bench player. But sometimes in these matches, win it more before you say it's won. Just put your foot on the neck and get to 35 or 42, then you can bring some guys on.
Yeah. Tell me a bit more about. Here's what I got excited about. Tell me a bit more about the scrum half, Vandenberg. Scores too low. I mean, what is he, 6th or 7th in line in South Africa? He looked all right.
Up. So he'd already
scored 2 sneaky tries.
He'd already taken over. Jaden Hendricks' spot. And then he sort of had a head-to-head with Faf, who looks like Faf could look like his father. They play similarly. They just don't have the same hair, but they look enough facial features enough where you could grow some more hair on Mornay, who's called Krappies. That's his nickname. And so just think of crap, like the tables, the poker. He debuted against the Wallabies in a monsoon in Perth a year ago. And so he had this incredibly bad conditions. Rossi wanted to see him play. Tony Brown wanted to see him play because they like him. He's a really good sniper. He's a bit like Tate, except he's got a much snappier pass, like a hard spiral. And then he played again in the rain in Cape Town against Barbarians. And so somebody's like, can I play when it's a normal day?
Yeah. Can I play a game in Molten Souls for a change?
So he had perfect weather at Loftus, and he showed what he could do. Yeah.
I was mega impressed when at the back of a scrum going forward, about to be a pushover try. He's just sitting there waiting. Number 8 completely loses the handle on the ball, and he goes, "You beauty!" Picks it up, dives over for a try.
That was a hard pickup.
Beauty.
The ball was bouncing away from him, and he that was really good. And he was going into the land of giants too.
Second try is a little pickup, little snipe through. So
he's a tough boy.
He looked good.
Yeah.
They'll put that one aside and come back and put 60 on Italy next week, probably.
Rossi's in a mood, and he's talking about 14 replacements, and he's talking about some people that are living on their laurels. I think for sure, it looks like Willie LaRue is just limping into his 100th. He needs one more. He looks like he cannot complete a basic tackle anymore. Bongi Manambi is probably also one of those guys that looks like he might not make it through this year. He just looks really old and slow.
Yeah.
And then finally, I think Faf. Sorry, but we may not be seeing his bobbing gold hair that much anymore. Mornay might have taken it. Yeah.
Might be. Argentina went down to England in La Plata, 35-12. They were disappointing, weren't they? It was 3-0 at halftime. The aforementioned George Ford dropped goal, and he missed another one right on. Missed one from about 48 metres. It was, I don't think it even got to within 10 metres of the post. It was ambitious at best. But he had a game in his 100th test, George Ford, and he just led them around. They got out to 22-0 then at 49 minutes, and it was just a matter of how much they'd win by from that point, wasn't it?
Yeah, I did say that George Ford was the miss on the Lions squad when it was first named. And now they're almost doing something where you go, maybe George Ford could have done what you wanted to get done with Owen Farrell all along with much more regular play, good form. I thought I'm not an Argentina fan, okay? So I'll just put it out there. I'm not one of those guys that thinks it's a second team. But if you were an Argentina fan, I can realize how tough it must be to be an Argentina fan, because they will kill you. They will break your heart. They will make you happy. And then, to go from the heights of beating the Lions, beautifully, and then
2 weeks ago it's. I mean, there's a lot of overlap between those two teams, but that team that played in La Plata looked like they had not played together before. Yeah.
No, I feel bad for those guys.
Yeah, it'll be concerning. There were a few other results around the weekend that sort of caught the eye. Japan beat Wales 24-19 in Fukuoka. Wales led that 19-7 at halftime and did not score a point in the second half. So that's their 18th straight loss. They are in the worst of bad spots right now.
It just feels like clubbing baby seals right now to talk bad about Wales. Like what? What is the new low? The false bottom?
Even as an Australian fan, I feel bad for Wales.
We talk a lot about finding people their real bottom, and that's when they change. Nadir or whatever. Yeah, they just keep finding new levels, and I go, I don't know, maybe you'll just be worse than the USA at some point. What's next?
Start digging up, for goodness sake. Scotland recorded their first ever win over the Māori All Blacks 29-26 in Whangarei. Ireland beat Georgia pretty comfortably in Tbilisi, 34-5 or something like that. And Hong Kong, mate, and this wasn't on my radar last week, I must admit, when we mentioned it, and mentioned Games of the Week. Hong Kong have secured their first ever World Cup qualification. They beat Korea 70 points to 22 in the final round of the Asia Rugby Championship. Which means they qualify for Rugby World Cup in Australia in 2027.
That's very cool, man.
That's enormous.
Yeah, well done.
Yeah. And so on that note, is there anything else we need to wedge in here at this point?
Yeah, I watched Kevin Foote's coached Baby Box, and then I watched a bit of the junior Wallabies beating Scotland. And what's cool about that 34-24 win by the under-20 Australia team is it sets up sort of an Ashes match between them and England, because England went down to South Africa 22-32 in a really thrilling match. And if you can watch it back, you should watch some highlights. But now that's a straight up shootout, I think. Australia versus England for this the playoffs. Yeah.
Could be. You know what that England under-20s team have? Like the England senior men's team, they have the second worst jersey number font in international rugby.
We're back to the fonts. That was a cool font, straight up shootout between the Baby Box, who have a very plain, normal,
very block, very
font.
normal. It's fine. Yeah. You know who might have the best one at the moment? Argentina. Black block font number on clean jersey. Otherwise, perfect.
I had so much fun when I saw at some moment in Allianz Tyburn losing a number or never having a number and playing number 3, fontless.
Yes.
And it was like Brett has somehow...
This movement of mine is
taking
winning
shape
one
slowly.
jersey at a time.
I see a day. I can dream of a day where the Lions will go out there and there'll be nothing on their backs.
Nothing on their backs.
That sort of maroony red they've got.
Take us back to schoolboy rugby, exactly. That then is the weekend post-mortem behind us. Tell us what you think by following Harry and I on the socials in our usual places, at Harry Baldy Jones and at BMC Sport. You can find the 8-9 combo on the socials as well, and you can have your say right here on the 8-9 YouTube channel. You can leave a comment on Spotify as well. We'd love to hear from you wherever you can get in touch. We love shares, we love ratings, we love reviews, so leave them for us as well. This is the 8-9 combo, the short side set piece combination you didn't realize you needed in a rugby podcast. I'm Brett McKay, he's Harry Jones, and we will be back in your ears in just a few days' time with another great rugby chat.
Come play with us. You're welcome, Hugh.
Here goes Jones with another bruising run. He links up with McKay, who pops back to Jones. They can't. They won't. They will. What a try. The Dream Team combo go in again.